hour or less than an hour. It might go over an hour. We probably will because once again we had technical difficulties, but we have figured out that the horrible buzzing that plagued us a couple of weeks ago is on my end, and you think it's these. And I don't know if I told you this, Bob, but these are Beats headphones.
Yeah.
They were supposedly very expensive, but I bought this at a flea market from some dubious merchants. Might go over an hour. Probably will.
So that's interesting. Maybe
Probably will. We have figured out that here
we'll get some kind of feedback there.
Where's it coming from? On my end, that normal buzzing is on my end. I don't know if I told you this. I think it's these. Paul, is that you? I don't know if I told you.
Yeah.
They're very expensive, but I bought this at a flea market.
It's like the playing the hangout. So that's interesting. Somewhere.
Okay, where's the feedback coming from?
Does anybody have a window open that's got the feedback?
Oh, you know what? That's okay. Hold on. I don't know if I told you. On my end. I don't know if I told you.
It's like ghostly voices from the past.
God, this is amazing.
Anybody have a window that's got all that sound is coming on your end, Rick, because when we're quiet, I'm seeing the audio lights coming up on your side. So
it was me. It was me.
Okay,
good. That was absolutely psychedelic. So, yeah, these
reminded me of my time in Humboldt County about 15 years ago, but we won't go there. Okay.
These cheap headphones were causing the interference. I think these were the ones I was wearing a couple of weeks ago. And once I got rid of those, the buzzing disappeared for the most part. So, here we are. Happy Star Wars Day.
Yeah. Big weekend.
Yeah. Let's
Free Comic Book Day on May 3rd, and May the 4th be with you for Star Wars Day, May 4th.
Which day was bigger for you, Bob?
For me personally, Free Comic Book Day. That's my favorite holiday of the year. I really love comics, as you know, so I go all out. I ended up only visiting 4 different shops, but they all had quite a lot of stuff going on at them. So that was cool.
Paul and I actually met at a comic shop that we both worked at. Paul, we never had Free Comic Book Day, did we? That was something that came along later, wasn't it?
For all I know, Free Comic Book Day existed back then, but the guy that ran the shop would probably have nothing to do with it. What is this free bucks? What are you talking about?
It started on in 2003, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, that was way after we had both left. So, so what did you pick up? What you said you got about 45 books?
57.
Oh.
So if you can, I don't know. It's not flipping over to me being shown on the screen there. So I don't know if people are actually going to see this.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yep.
I know you can see it, but I got a stack of a ton of books. I'll go through some of the cool ones. This is a hardcover that Archaea puts out. That's Mouse Guard. It's got a Mouse Guard story. It's got a Jim Henson's Labyrinth story in it. It's got a Rocket Boy Rust story in it. It's very cool, and this is the second time they did a hardcover. They did a hardcover a year before last. One of my favorite series, Atomic Robo. I'll kind of flip through. There were some good Valiant books. Sort of like Star Wars, we got Steam Wars, which is kind of a steampunk knockoff of Star Wars. that Antarctic Press is trying to do something with. We got the Hip Hop Family Tree.
Aha.
Kind of interesting. Like that one, I actually, on this guy here, the Midnight Tiger and Skyward, on the Midnight Tiger side, at the fourth shop, my regular shop that I went to, Ray Anthony Height, who is the artist on that series, he was there, and I spent about 3 hours just sitting and chatting with him, and he did a sketch for me of Midnight Tiger.
Nice.
While I was there. Great guy, and that series is coming out in July, so you know, the ones that everyone probably got, you got your DC selections, DC, and then the Kid DC one, and then Marvel had a Guardians of the Galaxy and a Rocket Raccoon book. Those are the ones that most people grab, right? Because, I mean, they're all, you know, as we know, here's the Guardians book. Most people are into Marvel and DC, right? So they go, and a lot of shops, they limit people on how many comics they can get, because on Free Comic Book Day, the comics aren't actually free. The shop ends up having to pay somewhere between 15 cents and a quarter for each free book.
Right.
You know, they have to pay for it as a promotional item. They give them free to the customer, which is why I always try to make a point of spending money at a shop that I'm scamming free comics off of. You know, the first shop I went to is a great shop in Laguna Niguel. It's called Nuclear Comics. Guy who runs it's Nuclear Comic and Skate Shop. They also sell skateboard decks and wheels, and the guy who runs the shop got the long curly hair. It's brown, but he looks like Shaun White, you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
You know, he's just like he's wearing a big board shorts and a, you know, tank top, and he's muscular, you know, just good-looking surfer guy. He runs the comic shop, and he lets you have as many comics as you want to take. So I got the bulk of my comics from him, but then I turned around, and because he always has a great sale on Free Comic Book Day, he has, like, in the back parking lot behind the store, he's got, you know, probably 50 long boxes full of dollar comics. He's got all the, not this week's comics, but, you know, all the rack books were 50% off cover price.
Nice.
And all the trade paperbacks were 30% off. And all the back issues, the more expensive back issues, were half off as well. Wow. So there's lots of stuff to do. And like I said, I dropped about $200 between... I bought stuff yesterday, and then he keeps the sale going. I went back again today, and I spent a little more time. You know, I spent about $100 or so each day. But I like to support the guy because, you know, I'm getting all my free comics from him, so I turn back around and I give him business. But, you know, when they were letting the people in the shop, they had a big line outside, and they let in about 10 or 15 people at a time to get the free comics, and, you know, keep it orderly. You'd go by and you'd pick up your free comics. They'd put them in a Free Comic Book Day bag for you. And then you could go and either go out the back door and look for the dollar books, or, you know, just go around the shop and, you know, just buy stuff. There was a big line. By the time I had made my selections, there were probably about 25 or 30 people in line to buy stuff, and they had one guy running the register and another guy with his iPhone with the little, you know, that square thing that plugs into it where you can do credit cards. And they were running 2 people at a time, just taking, you know, taking orders. So they were doing brisk business, which is great, right?
I think it's brilliant.
So that was first thing in the morning. He opened at 9 a.m., so I got there at 8:30. Finished about 10. I was in the shop about an hour yesterday, and then I drove up to Manhattan Beach, where I went to the Comic Bug. They had about 10 different artists there doing signings. And since I had gotten most of the free comics, when I got there, there was a huge line, right? They had a food truck outside. big line. They had a guy dressed as Spidey, and this guy was really agile because, you know, he was, when I drove up at first, he was up on top of a parking meter, you know, kind of like Spider-Man would, you know, just kind of crouched on there with his feet and hands, like you see Spider-Man perched on the end of a flagpole. This dude was physically up on top of a parking meter. And I'm like, that's pretty impressive.
Wow.
So I went in the, you know, don't need a free comic book door so I could get by the artists, and I went back and I was chatting with Richard Starkings, who does Elephant Man, and Richard Isanova, who he did the Dark Tower books and also did he's did an arc in Savage Wolverine recently. And we were talking. He said, "Oh, do you want a sketch?" You know, he's doing watercolor sketches. So I said, "Well," he said, "what do you want a sketch of? What do you want a drawing of?" And I said, "Whatever you want to draw. Draw something that you want to draw." He said, "Do you like Conan?" I said, "I love Conan." And we started talking about Conan because he grew up in France, and, you know, other than, you know, we were talking about Tintin, we were talking about, you know, Asterisk and things they have in France, but then he was like, "Well, I love Conan. It was one of the American comics." So he did this watercolor of Conan.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
For me.
Nice.
So, and again, you know, there was some creators there who had their own self-published stuff, and I talked to them for a while and bought their things. And then I bought, you know, they were having 30% off, I think, or 25% off on trades. So I bought a couple of trades there. You know, again, I want to support the shop. So I bought a couple of hardcover trades there. I got the Get Jiro, which is written by Anthony Bourdain. I don't know if you're familiar with that one or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I got Science Dog, which is a Robert Kirkman trade. And then I drove over to this other place called Biggie's Comics and Games in Westminster. I didn't get there till about, it was probably a little before 2 in the afternoon. And they were kind of dead at that point because they didn't have any free comics left, pretty much. I mean, they had they did have free comics. I'll take. I mean, they had the DC Futures End and Teen Titans Go and Guardians. They had the Marvel and DC stuff. But they didn't really have that big of a line. But they were having a pretty good sale, too. They were 40% off on trades, as well as statues and toys. So actually, I'll show you this.
Uh-oh.
I bought this Bowen Spider-Man statue
Nice.
that I didn't have, but it was 40% off, so it was pretty good. I don't have that one.
I find that hard to believe.
One I didn't have, you know. I have a lot of things. I didn't have that one. So, and then I went to Comics, Tunes, and Toys, which is my regular shop, and they had a bunch of easy ups out front and in this kind of breezeway between the buildings, and they had about 7 or 8 different artists there. You know, so they had Ray Height, who does the Midnight Tiger. They had Todd Nauk and a bunch of other guys. I got this sketch cover on the new Spider-Man done.
Nice.
That was done by a guy named Mike Vasquez, who was there. But very talented local artist. So big fun. And then again, you know, I picked up some stuff that my normal pull list stuff, and they had held aside some free comics for me. Now I didn't get there until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He still had free comic books fairly well in depth because he's really, you know, he's good. He was limiting people to like 3 or 4 free comics a piece, so it's not like people were just, you know, pillaging the place and running out the door. But, you know, he still had a line. There were about 30 or 40 people deep line for people getting free comics, and the artists who were in like Ray, who he had a big stack of the Midnight Tiger ones at his booth, so people could they could get one of those also in addition to what else they got.
Mm-hmm.
But big fun. I got stuff everywhere I went and spent a lot of money and got a lot of comics. I picked this up because I knew today was Star Wars Day. That is The Empire Striketh Back by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare. I have the first one. I have the New Hope in the style of Will Shakespeare. Nice. And it's, it's pretty funny. I mean, you read it, and it is the movie, but it's in Shakespeare's style.
The whole thing done in like Elizabethan English.
Yeah, So I'll give you the Luke versus Vader scene.
Oh, dramatic meeting.
So enter the chorus. And you're familiar with Shakespeare plays, they have the chorus. O mighty duel, O action ne'er surpassed, the lightsabers do clash and glow like fire. Darth Vader in the villain's role is cast, while Luke's young temper turneth soon to ire. They flash and fly like dancers in a set, yet never dance did know such deadly mood. Luke tires, and soon his brow begins to sweat, whilst Vader doth attack with strength renewed. And it goes on. Thy destiny doth lie with me, young Skywalker. Your teacher Obi-Wan did know 'twas true. Thou liest, O villain, cold and cruel. And it's like it goes on like that.
It's fantastic.
If you like Shakespeare at all and you like Star Wars, these are worth picking up.
Listen, I'm going to pick it up tomorrow because I want to do dramatic readings. Settle on TV, kids.
Start with the New Hope, man. You get the New Hope, then this one's out, and I assume that it will soon, if it's not already out, maybe it is Return of the Jedi, and
right.
Go on from there. And then today I was hitting my Blu-ray set here, hot and heavy, the Star Wars saga.
Which I would have done if my PlayStation hadn't blown up yesterday. Or the day. So let's go back real quick to Free Comic Book Day. Do you think that when they limit books, it works? Because that was one of my bone of contentions with some of the local shops around here. Some places had limits of 5 books. Some places had limits of 3 books. Some places had no limits. I mean, I understand that these books aren't free for the dealers, but I mean, what do you think is the sweet spot?
I think 3 is too few, because for me, I think the good thing on Free Comic Book Day is for people to try something new, and people are so, not people in general, but comic fans, they're so tied into Marvel and DC that if you tell them you can only have 3 comics, well, they're going to take the Marvel comic, and they're going to take the DC comic, and then they're going to take probably the other Marvel comic. They have the Guardians of the Galaxy and a Rocket Raccoon, or maybe they'll pick up like the Valiant one, or they're not going to try new stuff. And to me, getting the new stuff into people's hands so they can try some of these different things out and say, wow, that's cool, and then maybe be buying that stuff, that's better. The one guy, I mean, letting me take, 45 some odd books, that's probably a little excessive, but I'm glad he does it because it lets me get all the different books to review. But I think maybe a sweet spot's probably closer to 10, in my opinion. If you let people have, like somewhere 7, 8, 9, 10 in that range, then they're going to get the Marvel and DC stuff, and then they'll try out a few more things that look interesting.
No, you know what? You're right. You're right, because let's just say there's only 4 Marvel books available, and you're offered another 6 free books, very few people are going to walk away with just the Marvel books. They're going to the books are free, so they're going to try to fill that space. I think that's a very good idea.
You know, the other thing that could help the lines move faster, I think, with these stores that have a big line that I typically see, you know, because people get in there and they're just staring, looking at all these things, trying to make up their mind, and this is after they've been standing in line for 30 minutes to an hour, right? Mm-hmm. You know, to me, if I was running a shop, I would take all the books that I had available and you know, put them on a sheet of paper and make some copies and, like, hand it out and say, you know, check mark the ones that you want and, you know, check mark 5 or 6 second choices in case your first choices are not available when you get up to the front of the line. Mm. And then somebody can have thought about it, and then they, you know, give the slip, their order slip, to, you know, these guys, and they can, you know, pick the order a little quicker. Get them to the important part, which is going around through the shop and spending money. And the other part, because I planned out my free comic book day, I go out to the free comic book day site. It lists all the retailers that are participating, so you can see by zip code where the participating retailers are. But I called around and, you know, just kind of asked, you know, well, what are you doing for free comic book day? And, you know, see who's having creators there and what creator. I'd go to their web, you know, a lot of them will have the event on their Facebook page or on their website, so I check there first. And if the information's there, then I don't need to call. If it's not, if I can't find it, then I called them, and it helped me pick where I wanted to go. Because, you know, I called some shops, and they're like, oh, yeah, we got free comics, you know, you can pick 5 or whatever, but we don't do sales on free comic book day. It's like, okay, well, I don't need to come to your shop on free comic book day then. You know, I think that having a sale is a great, you know, thing because, you know, it's driving revenue into the store, and it's getting people to buy stuff that they might not normally have bought.
Well, business 101. I mean, if it's free comic book day and every retailer has free comics to give, what are you going to do to stand out, right? I mean,
right.
And one thing I have a question to both of you. I had no idea. I mean, maybe you guys can school me on the inner workings of this free comic book day. But Rick, you mentioned something to the fact that retailers have to pay for these books.
Right.
They're not given to them.
They're not a regular book. The page size might be limited. There might be fewer ads, but basically it's a giveaway. It's you know, like.
But in many cases, it's like a full issue of a comic. I mean, they're not. You know, some of them are like, you know, maybe they're like 10 pages of story and then a bunch of sketchbook pages. But a lot of these ones are, you know, they're a full 20-page comic book. You know, 20 or 22 pages of story and art, and it's evolved over the years too, because maybe in the early days of Free Comic Book Day, a lot of the offerings were just, you know, they would reprint something, you know, just like some old #1 issue that they want to, you know, get people into that series, or it's just, you know, something, you know, more sketchbooky. It wasn't that much, and it's just every year it kind of gets better and better, and the different publishers now kind of compete. What DC does for the last couple of years is their main Free Comic Book Day is a 0 issue to what their summer event is going to be.
That's right. That's right.
You know, so it kind of, the story leads right into that, whereas Marvel, they do it as to a comic or comics that are tied into what their summer movie's going to be. So, you know, they've got Guardians of the Galaxy coming out in August, right? So they're really pushing Guardians. So that's what their Free Comic Book Day is. And it'll push people, theoretically, you know, to the comic series, but also just to get them liking Guardians, and then the different ones cost. Like I got to imagine that this hardcover had to have cost, I don't know how much this costs a retailer. I don't know if it's 40 cents or it's whatever it is, and I think the regular ones probably are 15 cents or a quarter. I mean, they're way less because the publisher is, I think, kicking in too, some amount for it. Because you buy a regular comic. I mean, these comic like this is now either $2.99 or $3.99, right? So normally a retailer, if they're getting half off, they're going to pay $1.50 for that book. So if they're getting it for a quarter, that's much less than they would normally pay. And if they're going to be handing out 10 free books, they're risking, for each customer that's in line, that's $2.50 out of their pocket. And if they're giving you 4 free comics, that's $1 out of their pocket for every person who goes through the line. But on the other hand, if you get somebody turned on to comic books and they're going to now be coming to your store buying comics on a regular basis, then that was a worthwhile investment. And I usually talk to people when I'm in line at Free Comic Book Day, and I'd be there, and there'd be a father and his maybe 8-year-old son, and they were talking about how they got into comics at Free Comic Book Day a couple of years ago, and now they read. They've been picking up maybe 3 or 4 different books each month and liking them, and so they like the Spider-Man and things like that, which is fine, right? And that's cool. They got into comics because of Free Comic Book Day. And having the artists, especially artists that are real, and you can't have, an artist necessarily related to a Free Comic Book Day book at every comic shop, but I know that a lot of people were getting this Action Lab book with Midnight Tiger and really digging it, and they're saying, "Oh, I like this," and then, I was sitting next to Ray, and we'd say, "Well, go tell Kevin, have him add it to your, start a pull list and have him add it to your pull list in the shop," because they're putting together the orders now for issue 1 that comes out in July. So, I think it's a good thing. I talked to the different store owners yesterday, and they were all, they didn't say it exactly like this, but the general impression that I got is that it's one of the biggest revenue sales days of the year. It's kind of like Black Friday for comic shops. I mean, it's not exactly, because it's not like they're going into the black for, the whole year on that day or anything, but it is, a huge sales day for these shops that were having the percent off sales and things like that, which is kind of smart, because if the stuff that you're having the sale on, it's not like the brand new books, but it's your back stock. And that stuff does not really in shops fly off the shelves, right? So that's kind of just tied up capital. So if you can, take that and turn it back into money, now you can go and get some new stuff that people might be more interested in than, the stuff that's in your back stock. Yeah, that seems like smart sales to me. And the shops that I was in, I mean, they had crowds in there. They had lots of people standing in line. I mean, at the first 2 shops I went to, I had to stand in line for probably about 20 minutes just to get to the register. Wow. There was just a big line of people that were buying things. So it wasn't just people were buying and, dashing out the door. They were buying stuff.
So does it seem like there's more attention paid to it? It's almost like the geek culture is becoming more and more mainstream, so this is becoming more of a thing, like this whole Star Wars Day. Now you've got Free Comic Book Day. It's starting to be ingrained into the popular culture, it feels like.
There was a lot of people at these shops that I was talking to that were not regular comic book readers. They were at these shops, and they were like, wow, look at this kind of thing. I would talk to people. They'd be kind of standing around looking confused, and I would just start a conversation with them. And they're like, well, what do you like to read? And then I'd recommend stuff. This one guy was like, oh, I used to like, Tarzan and the Phantom when I was younger, and, it's like are there any wholesome comics? I'd like something faith-based. And I'm like, that kind of stumped me for a second, but I do know that they just put out a hardcover called Noah by Darren Aronofsky that's kind of a sci-fi version of Noah that's not, totally, they're not like doing anything crazy in it, because I read a review copy of it online for my site. So I pointed him at that, and I flagged the owner down, and I said, hey, this guy wants to know about this Noah hardcover. I don't know where it is in the shop, but can you help him? And then he started a conversation, and he pointed him to some other things too. But there's lots of this kind of stuff goes on, and I was seeing a lot of people. They were trying out. What was really interesting to me, though, was so many people in the shop were just swarming over the image section. The shops that didn't have it just in strict alphabetical order. One of the first shop I went to, Nuclear, they've got an image section, a Marvel section, a DC section, and kind of like an everything else section. And people were all over that image section. They were just buying the hell out of those Image comics. But it was, it was the female audience and like the older audience, and I think that's exactly the stuff that appeals to that demographic.
Interesting. So, what did you do for Star Wars Day besides the Blu-ray?
Could you actually hold that Blu-ray box up again? That looked really cool.
Sure.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's the.
I gotta say that the cover doesn't look anything like something that would look like something that would come out in Europe or Japan. The design
it's
for
nice. They have like the little section for each movie, and then they got a couple of extra discs in here that are special features.
That's fantastic.
What is it, like 7 or 8 discs total?
Yes, it is. It's the 6 movies and 3 bonus discs, so 9 discs total.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I think Connor got it for Christmas a couple of years ago, maybe.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I got it discounted at Amazon. It was like maybe $65 or $70.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like for what you're getting, it was I thought it was a really good deal.
So, what is your first Star Wars memory?
My first Star Wars memory was going to see Star Wars before it was when it was just called Star Wars. Before there was A New Hope, before there was Episode 4, it was Star Wars. How many did you saw it when it originally came out, right? Rick?
No. What I saw was the Marvel Treasury Edition. That predated the movie. And spoiler alert, the book came out before the movie was released.
Yep, I got that too.
Yeah, so it was just like, wow, Obi-Wan gets killed. So it just kind of blew my mind. And then, I sat and I watched the movie. I did go to the movie. I went to, Paul, you'll know this. I saw it at the Roosevelt Theater.
Yeah.
And I saw it 14 times.
That's right.
Just kept going over and over and over again.
Yeah. I had I remember my father had a subscription to Time magazine, and I remember there was a cover story of Star Wars. And I don't know if we saw it the first week it came out or what, but there was the phenomenon had started, so maybe I was a Johnny-come-lately with it. But I remember my folks taking my sister and I to see it at the Roosevelt in Hyde Park. But I remember my first Star Wars memory is actually going through that magazine and seeing images of it and seeing like that was like this is what I'm going to prepare myself to see, and then just even that didn't prepare me for it. But
you bring up an interesting point. There was so much, and this is where this is so long ago that the dates and the times get all fuzzy. But there was a lot of hype, and there was a lot of merchandising. And just a lot of images and toys and all these things that I don't remember.
But that came after.
Or did it?
Those.
I always feel like it came right around the same time.
George Lucas actually invented, I think, I won't say invented, but they were a pioneer of the toy tie-ins for movies, because I remember very distinctly when the first movie, when Star Wars originally came out, and I saw it, I must have seen it 10 times also, but I wanted, an X-Wing fighter. I wanted a Millennium Falcon. But there were no action figures. There were no model kits. None of that stuff existed. They had the record album. I remember buying the record album with the John Williams soundtrack on it, and that had the booklet in it, and you get the pictures and stuff. Mm-hmm. I remember buying iron-ons that you could make T-shirts for yourself from the iron-on, right?
Yeah.
I remember
that you would get in the little kiosk in the mall,
like Peachy folder kind, or those folders that you'd get for school, and those would have a Star Wars picture on them, but they didn't have the toys. I remember kind of kit bashing. We didn't call it that back then, but I remember going to the model shop and buying various cheap model kits and, just taking wings and other pieces, and I made an X-Wing fighter out of pieces from, 3 or 4 other model kits, which is essentially, I think, how they built them for the movie in the first place, right? That's how those guys in the style, mine looked like crap, but I liked it, flew it around and stuff. But there were no toys. I think when Empire came out, that was when the toys started.
That's it. Yeah, it's like I said, it's real fuzzy. There was a lot of merchandise. They were on every magazine cover. I remember watching a TV show called That's Hollywood, which was just basically a clip show for 20th Century Fox of all their old stuff. But the only reason I would watch it is because in the opening and closing credits, they had a scene of a TIE fighter.
Yep.
And I would get chills watching this TIE fighter. I also remember buying an 8mm film of Star Wars that I played on a projector that I still have. There was no sound. It wasn't in color, but I just had to get it because, again, this all predated VHS tapes also.
And that Super 8 probably cost you $60.
But the gum cards, the comic books, there was just so much tied into this franchise peripherally that I didn't realize until I got older and took a step back and said, holy crap, there was a lot of Star Wars stuff. It
was a revolutionary thing. It was really the precursor to modern special effects.
Mm-hmm.
They had it in Superman as well, but it just, that whole summer blockbuster action movie genre that's more of like the sci-fi fantasy stuff and not, before Star Wars, the big blockbuster movie, you'd get something like Jaws, which is a great movie, but it's not the same kind of genre. That's a real, drama, horror, kind of just regular kind of stuff. Star Wars, it opened floodgates, man. It changed things.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. Look at how it affected the comic world. Now all of a sudden cosmic characters became in vogue. There would have been no Star-Lord if there was no Star Wars. Uh, it just, and the list goes on and on.
I think I was about 8 or 9 when that came out. What did it come out in '77, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think I mean, at that point I was already a pretty big movie buff for a kid, and I remember I was, my whole world was Planet of the Apes up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
And, but there was something about Star Wars, and it just captured my imagination like nothing else, man. I think up to that point, like all the sci-fi stuff, like I wasn't expecting the opening shot of the with the ships, but when they land on Tatooine, right, and they're all of a sudden they're in a desert, the droids, and it's just like, this is not what I'm used to. I'm used to seeing Flash Gordon, or Battlestar was Battlestar Galactica on at that point, or that came afterwards?
That came a little bit afterwards, yeah.
As a result of Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe it was in the '70s, but you're right. I mean, like Planet of the Apes is a good example. I love those Planet of the Apes movies, and they were I loved sci-fi because I was watching Star Trek on TV from the original series and reruns from well before Star Wars, but Star Trek was much more, human action. I mean, you'd have, they'd shoot a phaser every now and again, they'd transport down, but, you didn't have these kind of epic space battles. You didn't have
it was cerebral.
And TIE fighters and the Imperial Star Destroyers and the droids and all these things that looked the way that they looked and the way that they did the special effects. While that stuff, if you look at it in its original form, is crude by today's standards. It was light years past what we got in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And Planet of the Apes, I love Planet of the Apes, and I still like those movies, but again, it was guys in those the really well done prosthetics.
Yeah.
But it was basically just it was people in prosthetics, and there wasn't that scale that you got out of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, that's the difference between Star Wars. Really delineated the difference between science fiction and science fantasy, because seriously, up until then, sci-fi was sci-fi. Sci-fi had social relevance. Sci-fi was addressing specific issues through the veil of science fiction, whether it be racism, discrimination, any number of social woes and social ills. This Star Wars was just straight up just fantasy. It was almost like sword and sorcery in a different context, and I think that's where it worked. Timing is everything. If that movie had come out a year before or a year later, I do not think it would have had the impact that it did. It was just it was just brilliant timing, and every little element came together. If John Williams had not done the score, the movie would have bombed.
That score was so phenomenal.
I mean,
John
that record,
Williams.
that had to be everybody had that record. I still have it. A big double album. Double albums were almost unheard of.
Double album, yeah. Oh, and it's weird. I mean, that score. I remember seeing the documentary on the making of it about 8-9 years ago or so. Came on one of the DVDs, and it was a phenomenal documentary, and it just, it showed you how cheesy nobody believed in this film when they were making it, right? And it was like, you actually heard the actor playing Darth Vader using his own voice while they're, in the rushes, and it was laughable. But then when like you said, everything kind of came together, and that score with John Williams, man, when I remember sitting in the Roosevelt Theater and it hit. It was just a fanfare hit. It was like, oh my God.
It gave the movie weight. It gave it gravitas. It made it serious. You were in a fantasy movie, but you were there with. You got to remember, I was 13 at the time, so I felt like I was watching a grown-up movie because they have serious music and serious things are going on. This isn't just some corny action flick. This is something serious, and I took it that way, and I think everybody from my generation who grew up with this thing took it seriously.
Yeah. And like Bob said, it had scale. It was a great word, and a great way to describe it. And it was fun.
Yeah,
A lot of fun. I mean, it was for an 8-year-old, 10-year-old. I mean, nothing beat it.
Yeah.
It was Star Trek. It was only with Star Trek. I remember, like, I think I was too young at that time. Like, I only got to appreciate Star Trek later on when I could actually, the stuff was over my head, the stuff they were talking about, as a kid. But I still loved to watch it just because it was, it was science fiction. It was guys going to another planet. The Vulcan looked cool with his pointy ears, and but I had to wait till a little bit later to actually appreciate that show. I still love it. I don't watch the other ones though. I never got into the other ones.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Let me not start.
So Bob, did you think that there was actually going to be a sequel? Oh, yeah.
I have to pull this out because it's.
Oh my God, that is amazing. I'm so jealous.
I have 7 of these things. This is Luke's blue one. I've got a Vader one. I've got a Luke's green one. I've got Obi-Wan's lightsaber. I've got Mace Windu's lightsaber, the purple one.
Purple one, good. That's the rare one.
all different ones, but they have the different. I like how they have the different hilt. Anyway, what was your question again before I distracted you with my saber?
So we all saw the movie. We all were affected in one way or another. There was no internet back then, but I was very into Starlog, Cinefantastique, and all the other trade publications, so I knew all about it. I brought the novelizations.
Yep.
Had those, which were nice because they were basically like the director's cut of the movie, and there were scenes in the book that weren't in the movie.
I remember, you read that, and remember Splinter of the Mind's Eye by...
Yes.
Yes.
They would do these, what became a huge expanded universe, which Disney's now kind of disavowed all of that stuff recently. But, you ate that stuff up because, again, this was before videotape. It was before DVD. Right. It was before any easy access to this stuff. Well, we had the Marvel comic series of Star Wars that ran for 100 and some odd issues, right?
Yes.
Maybe, 110, 111 issues? And that was continuing adventures. I love that, but to your question being, did you think there was going to be a sequel? And not really. I mean, other than the James Bond movie, I guess you had James Bond and Planet of the Apes, so there was a precedent for being, the other ones. But when you saw Star Wars, it wasn't like, oh, well, they're obviously going to make another one. It was when you saw Empire, you obviously knew, they cut it in the middle of a scene, basically. It was like, yeah, wait 3 years, guys. Suffer.
Well, I was leading up to that because as fondly as I remember Star Wars, Empire was a completely different animal because now I'm a little older, I'm a little more familiar with the material, and like you said, you've got this expanded universe that has sprung up around this one epic film. So anything about this movie, I am gobbling up. I'm just soaking in as much content as I can, along with comic books and all the other things I was doing. So 1980 rolls around, I go see Empire. I went with my family. We got there late, so we got split up. I wound up sitting next to a very cute girl that she was so distracting I could barely focus on the movie, but being the huge nerd that I am, I did. And I was just transfixed. This movie was amazing. And we got to the ending, and I couldn't speak. I was just shell shocked. It's like, how could they do this? What if something happens? You can't do this in a movie. You can't have a cliffhanger like that. That's unheard of. I don't ever remember seeing a cliffhanger in a movie like that. I've seen it on TV, sure. I mean, that was a staple of the old Batman series and some of the old serials that I used to watch.
Till next week.
Yeah,
It wasn't 3 years.
And they didn't even give you a time frame. At least nowadays, they say, look for Captain America, spring of 14 or whatever. But this, you were just like, what am I going to do?
This is a good, people who weren't seeing Empire Strikes Back in the theaters back in 1980, they don't have the same frame of reference that we do on that, because to people who first saw these movies in Revival House theaters or on DVD or Blu-ray, it's like, oh, that movie's over. Pop the other disc in. It's like the people who read trade paperback collections of a series that, especially a series that suffered from tremendous delays in the creation of the issues. Remember reading Camelot 3000?
Jesus Christ, yes.
And there was like a year or something in between a couple of those issues. And the same things have happened in modern times with a variety of different things. But, it's a different experience to the person who read that thing serialized, where you had to wait a really long time between chapters, and someone who just picks up the collection and says, "Oh, here's the whole story. I can watch it at my pace and experience it the way that I want to experience it." It's not, well, you were going to wait some indeterminate amount of time. It was, like you said, it's not even like they told us, well, in May of 1980, the next part's going to come out. It was just like, well, maybe we'll make another one, and maybe we won't.
It's funny because Rick has been telling me for the longest time that I needed to start watching Breaking Bad, and I think I probably made the right decision by waiting until basically the series was over before I started marathoning it, because there was absolutely no way that I was gonna wait in between. I can't do that anymore. So yeah, I think I'm spoiled by that kind of thinking. But yeah, I remember when I saw, I think I saw Empire Strikes Back when we went to Montreal for a vacation. We saw it up there, and yeah, I remember being blown away by the cliffhanger aspect of it. But I think I was so shell shocked by it that I wasn't thinking oh, how long do we have to wait for the next one? I was just like, wait a minute, what happened to Han Solo?
Yeah.
And wait a minute, Luke, Vader, come on, I was shell shocked.
They broke every convention. They broke every convention with this movie because it was all about America loves the underdog. So these scrappy little rebels, they blew up the Death Star. Yay! The next movie, they got their asses handed to them.
Yeah. And going back to what Bob was saying about how the universe of Star Wars, the first one had an epic scale to it. First Empire Strikes Back, it starts off not in a desert planet, but in the ice world, Hoth, right? I mean, it's just like, my God, this is the little things like that, just like what it did to my young mind. It was just like how large is this universe that they're playing in, and it just goes on forever. It's just it was wild, man. We're not going to talk about the third one, are we?
No. Well, here's the thing.
I was let down by the third one at the time. I got to tell you, there were way too many Muppets in that movie.
Thank you.
For my taste, and that's what, in retrospect, you're not that shocked that Lucas does some horrible thing like create Jar Jar Binks, because he's running around with Ewoks and Cy Snoodles and the Goofy Muppet Band prancing around with Jabba the Hutt's palace and things like that. It's just, there were so many of those things in that movie that it was just it's kind of distracting to me.
I know, but there's something. For me, there was something about the actual script that really, the story, not the story, but the script, that really worked for me. The dialogue with the Emperor, between Luke and the Emperor, I thought was just one of the greatest things in the series. But like you said, these one or two little shining moments don't make up for a Hollywoodization of this project. And
you can take that with a lot of the movies. A lot of people absolutely revile Phantom Menace, and they, just disavow it. Like, I can't even watch it. There were elements. Sure. There were terrible, terrible parts in that movie, but at the same time, there were sequences of that movie that I thought were stunning. I love the lightsaber stuff with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan and the Darth Maul stuff, and watching it on Blu-ray is the perfect way to experience that, because it's like, Misa Misa Masa Luke, whatever, you stupid Jar Jar Binks, horrible racial, just terrible, terrible Trade Federation, and just kind of like next scene. Oh, here's some Jedis fighting with lightsabers. I'm gonna watch that. And it's just like Gun City. Oh, flip. Just be gone with that. And it makes the experience much better, in my opinion.
See, well, this is the weird thing. There are those people like Paul's age and younger who. A good example is my brother. My brother has disavowed all versions of Star Wars except for 4, 5, and 6. He refuses to see any of the others. They don't exist. This new set of movies coming out, they're done. And I've never understood that, because I'm such a fan that I want to see or try to envision what Lucas's vision was, because he said from the get-go, and I'll never forget this, because I used to tell my friends this in junior high. It's like, they're going to make 3 trilogies. Do you understand? 9 movies. And they scoffed. It's like, there's no way. They can't do that. It'll never work. You can't make 9 movies of one huge, long, continuous story. It's like, I'm telling you, it's going to happen. And, the first movie comes out, and it's like, well, I guess I was wrong. There's no way they can make 3 movies out of this nonsense. Then the second movie comes along. It's like, well, maybe. Phantom Menace comes along. Now it starts to click for me. So now I'm not going to dismiss the series that's coming up. I want to see how it plays out. And when I watch these movies in context from start to finish, it is a very powerful and sad story about Anakin Skywalker. And I think that's what people seem to forget. There's goofy characters in all of them. Luke got attacked by the abominable snowman on Hoth.
Yeah.
Bumbles bounce. What's he doing?
Those Minox and the stuff when they're in that asteroid.
Yeah, that looks like something out of Star Trek.
Yeah, I think you're right. It has elements that are like just total 7-year-old elements, that are appealing to like the littlest kid in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, the other parts. So, you kind of look at the movies in that context. You're right. Although knowing and getting kind of just the Star Wars mythos sort of by osmosis into you, it seems like you have a different experience if you go into these movies knowing that Vader is Luke and Leia's father, that they're brother and sister. You get like in Empire when Leia comes and lays that big tongue kiss on Luke to make Han jealous. It's like one of the creepiest moments in film when you, actually put the context into it of that they're brother and sister. And there's no way Lucas knew that they were when he wrote that scene, I don't think.
No,
that was an added on later kind of moment.
Yeah, everything hinged on how successful these movies were, and after a certain point, you can't backpedal, so you just kind of have to ignore it. But one of the things that people forget, and this is me going on about the first trilogy again, the main downfall of the Jedi was their arrogance, and I don't think that's ever been really discussed. And you don't see it until Attack of the Clones, because there were just these little scenes that just showed the Jedi Council to be extremely arrogant. Anakin Skywalker was just an arrogant pain in the ass. Little things like that, because people are getting caught up in, the other, like the stupid diner scene. Or was that from a different movie? I don't remember. It's all blurring into one. But I like the trilogy, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do. I mean, there's people already grousing about having members of the original cast in there, and I was like, how could you not?
Oh yeah, and it's going to be set in a time where they're now age appropriate to play those characters in this trilogy. So yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean, if they were trying to, put some cinnamon buns on Carrie Fisher's head and have her play 30. No, that would be bad. But if they're having her play, grandmother, Leia, and you've got the kids, the solo kids, and stuff running around, and you got the crusty old, Mark Hamill, playing the old Jedi master. That can work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just got to do it the right way.
Right.
Yeah, I think they got the right guy to do it. I mean, I like what he did with the Star Trek stuff. I mean,
and you know what? I appreciate the fact that Disney has a hold of this stuff, because whatever people bag on Disney all the time, but Disney knows how to take care of their intellectual property. Mm. They don't do. There would not have been Jar Jar Binks, I don't think, if Disney had owned Star Wars from right after Return of the Jedi.
That's a very good point.
They would have done something else, but it wouldn't have been as over-the-top ridiculous as it was.
I mean, Bob, remember all the naysaying and the hand-wringing when Disney bought Marvel? People thought it was like the end of the world.
Oh, yeah, it's like, they're going to come in and, Captain America is going to have mouse ears instead of wings on his thing. And it's like the actual comic book division is like a mote of dust to Disney. It's just like all they care about is the intellectual property that comes flowing out of there. They could give a crap about the actual comic book production over there.
Right.
I think it's the same way with, the Star Wars stuff, Indiana Jones stuff. I mean, what you will get is you get, some crossover potentials. You'll actually, I don't know what the licensing agreements are like, but they've already started having Marvel stuff at the Disneyland parks. Not rides yet.
Oh, wow.
But, they've had in Disneyland here, I know several people that have passes, but they had like a big thing with the Thor movie where they had guys dressed up, big burly dudes dressed up like Thor, and they had like the throne and hammer, all kind of artifacts from the movie, and they might have done stuff for Captain America too, but they've been doing stuff at the Disney parks. And it's the same thing that, Disney is a natural match. I wasn't surprised for Star Wars and Indiana Jones because, they've had the Star Wars ride at Disneyland for, 20 years or something?
Right.
Or 15 years at least. And you want to talk about fabulous. I mean, have you been on Star Tours ever?
No, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
I mean, you go on Star Tours, and it's a motion simulator ride, right? But you're flying around, and there's, you're dodging through an asteroid like in Empire Strikes Back, and you got TIE fighters flying around, and, you're moving in this motion simulator synced up with the film image, and it's like you're in this Star Tours shuttle flying around the Star Wars universe. And now they've updated the ride where they just put a new, you can just put a new film on and reprogram the simulator, and you can do different, you can go to Hoth one time, and you can go, they fly to Naboo, and you go dive in the water and, go through the planet like in Phantom Menace and stuff. It's cool. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. Motion simulator rides like that. I like motion simulator rides, and they're, you just, aside from the line complex that you have to put around it, you just got like 6 or 8 motion simulators that hold, 40 or 50 people each, and you don't need to be laying all this roller coaster track, but it sure feels the same, to your head as, they're perfectly synchronizing what you're seeing on the screen with the, tilts and pitch and yaw and all that of the whole room.
Cool. Very cool. So, with this new set of Star Wars movies that are coming out, do you think this is a deliberate attempt to capture the imaginations of the 7-year-olds out there, or is this more or less, let's just revitalize the franchise and throw a wide net and see what we can get?
I don't know. I mean, I think they're going to try to appeal to as broad a base as they can. But Star Wars, for having, just the movies and some cartoon shows and things, it has Trek has a very solid fan base, but it doesn't seem as devoted and fanatical anymore as it used to be, because they're just, there's, when the series were on, I mean, I remember going to the Star Trek experience at the Hilton Hotel in Vegas.
How was that?
It was really cool. I mean, they had like a whole museum of, Star Trek stuff that you go through. They had Quark's Bar, and I was there one time when they were having some, just accidentally, but they were having a autograph signing of some of the actors who had played Klingons in Next Generation, including Gowron, with the big crazy eyes. They're not allowed to wear the makeup, but a whole bunch of these, you see them at cons, the guys who dress up as Klingons. There were a bunch of these dudes there because they wanted to get the autographs of their Klingon, So I was sitting with Janine. We were in Quark's Bar having lunch, and then they just kind of roped off right next to our table to have the line, and they put these tables up, and in come these, the actors, and they're sitting like about 10 feet from us, and this big line of Klingons comes in. We just, we're ordering drinks and desserts. We didn't want to leave this table while we were there. But they closed that down. They don't have that anymore. That was really cool. But that's the thing. I think the Star Trek fandom is kind of toned down a little bit, whereas Star Wars, I mean, it's going, man. They every other year they have a big Star Wars convention. It's called Star Wars Celebration. So they have it in odd-numbered years so far. I don't know, maybe they'll have it more, but the next one is next year. And it's going to be here in Anaheim, so me and some other people, we already have our tickets to it.
Nice.
We're going to go. I mean, I wouldn't fly across the country to go to it, but if it's right in my own backyard, what the heck, right?
Paul, what do you think? What do you think? What does the future portend for this new Star Wars? Are you interested in it at all?
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what they do. I mean, I didn't care for the last 3 films at all. You know that.
Yeah, I know. That's a whole other.
They bored the hell out of me.
Oh, come on!
I thought they were completely disjointed. Like, if there were great things in it, like Bob said, like there was some great action scenes in it, but I thought they were some of the most horribly directed films I've seen in a long time.
Squirted a tear when Anakin caught on fire after getting his arms and legs cut off.
Yeah, I mean, but everything leading up to that was just, I mean, the movies are like one long headache to me. Okay.
Why did I bring you on this show?
Yeah, why? Yeah. I don't have you don't have my like email on the under
Oh
my.
my God!
I'm really looking forward to the next series. I really am. I think they got the right guy to do it. I really like how they kind of rebooted the Star Trek movies, and they were a lot of fun. I think that was the thing. There was something, I kind of liken it to the difference, and a lot of it has to do with, like Bob used the word context. When you're growing up, things are different. Maybe too much time elapsed between the first series and the second one for me to have the same experience. I think with the James
Did you go see the special editions when they hit theaters? Did you go see the special editions in theaters when they came out?
Not in theaters, no.
See, I think that was, because I went with my kids, and we all went and saw those on the big screen, and I thought that was really good timing because they released those all, kind of right before Phantom Menace came out, and it really got us into that mindset, and then you have your whole, Han shot first kind of arguments, and, they added in their little extra things and redid the special effects and things like that. But, it got you back in the mood for these movies.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I think I did see the first one, A New Hope, which you're right, wasn't called A New Hope at first, was it? I'm going back to the Bond. When I grew up watching the Bond films, like I grew up watching the Roger Moore ones, which a lot of Bond aficionados, they seem to hate the Roger Moore films. Those are the ones I grew up on. Something about those movies, they're just, I think my sister put it best, they're whimsical. They were a lot of fun. And I took the same thing from the first Star Wars trilogy. The second one, it just I don't know, it was missing something to me. I'm going to go back and watch them again because I think that it's been a long time, I think. I haven't seen them in the theaters. So I'm going to have to watch them all again, but I'm looking forward to the next series, if only because I think the guy they got behind it is probably the right man for the job. And I think you make a good point about Disney. I think people are always up in arms just because it's Disney, and I think you make a great point about the fact that when they took over Marvel, look what they did for the world of Marvel and film. It's a whole new world. What did you? Before that, what was the first Marvel film that Disney did? Was it Iron Man?
I don't know when the actual sale closed. I think that Marvel Studios kind of got off the ground before the Disney sale was complete.
Yeah.
I think what Disney brings to the table is knowing when not to screw with something. I think people had this tremendous fear that Disney was going to just come in and meddle with things. And I really believe that Disney is, they're a juggernaut. They are too smart to screw with things that aren't broken. I think that they really tend to leave things alone that are making money for them. They will take those things and leverage them in lots of new and different ways and make extra money out of them, but I don't think they tend to screw with the root thing that's making them money.
See, this is what I want to see. And I think again, if they're smart, I want to see Princess Leia as Carrie Fisher is now. I want to see her as this hard-drinking lush who just can't deal with living with Han Solo. She can't deal with, it's like, heavy lies the crown. She can't deal with that with the responsibilities of basically running the the allegiance. And I don't know. I think
just sitting around in a bathrobe with a you know, big glass of some pastel-colored booze in her hand. And
Some blue liquid, yeah, just taking a swig and grimacing at an aging Harrison.
J.J. Abrams can bring some Rigelian ale over from the Star Trek universe. He just got a big decanter of it.
Oh, God. The gray-haired Chewie just tinkering with that Falcon.
Well, I saw this the last Coen Brothers film, the Inside Llewyn Davis, which I guess the guy, the actor in that is going to be in this film. I don't know if he's playing the Han and Leia's kid or whatever, but
What's his name?
Adam
Driver?
Actually, I'll look it up. Possibly.
That's a kid. I started watching the HBO series Girls, and the kid is phenomenal. It's a great show. And he's really good, so it'd be interesting to see what he does.
No, this would be Oscar Isaac.
Oh, the other guy. Okay, yeah. All right, I know this guy.
Yeah.
Not personally.
Yeah, but he's good. He's good. When I saw, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I could see this guy he could be in this world.
All right. Well, before we bring this to a close, I want to talk about spoilers real quick. This weekend, Spider-Man came out. Now, I didn't get a chance to see it, but for some reason, I have to stay off the internet because people can't seem to stop talking about this movie. And usually what happens is they'll get a sentence or two into the movie, and then they'll say, oh, by the way, spoiler alerts, not knowing how to bury the lead. It's just, it's aggravating.
Yeah, I've been similarly avoiding it. We're going to try to go tomorrow, but, you know, with Free Comic Book Day and everything going on this weekend, I just didn't get a chance to go see it. And all I have noticed, and I haven't been reading the details, but there's already just a tremendous amount of nerd rage attached to this movie.
I don't understand why, because there is an elephant in the room, but as a longtime reader, Bob, you, me,
yeah,
we know what it is. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I'll have to see it. You know, we'll see it. We'll talk about it next week.
Okay.
I mean, I'm mystified in general when people get so worked up about these kind of mindless entertainment summer action flicks. I mean, they're based on a comic book character, but I don't take it as a personal attack against my childhood if they make a movie that's not the exact way that I have it worked up in my mind. And the main reason for that is I don't sit around working up my perfect Spider-Man movie in my mind so that I can be disappointed when the movie's not that exact way.
So this is going to be the Brooklyn Bridge or the George Washington Bridge? That's all I want to know. Well, the reason I brought it up, I saw now this. I don't know if you're a huge Godzilla fan, Bob. I am.
I have watched Godzilla movies in the past. I want to see the new movie when it comes out.
Okay, my boys.
I used to watch Godzilla movies on TV all the time. You know, Mothra, Mecha Godzilla. You know.
So see, you're no stranger to Godzilla.
You know.
So I saw a film clip, and the clip has a huge spoiler in it. I mean, huge. But I kind of knew that going in, but I pressed play anyway, and I saw it, and it doesn't diminish how much I want to see the movie. I still want to see it, and as a matter of fact, it solidified my feelings on how good this movie is going to be. But it's still the internet's got to stop.
I haven't really. I mean, I've seen. I think there was a trailer for Godzilla before Captain America, maybe, or some movie I've seen recently. I don't recall there being any kind of big spoilery kind of thing in that.
Yeah, this one I think is strictly on the internet, and
I don't look at movie trailers and clips on the internet. I mean, if I'm at a movie theater, I kind of have to watch what they're showing me before the movie.
Yeah.
Because I want to get my seat that I like, and I'm sitting there and praise the Lord for stadium seating theaters that exist almost everywhere now. Yeah. Unless you got Wilt Chamberlain slapping himself down in front of you, you're pretty solid that you're not going to have somebody's gigantic melon like right in front of you throughout the whole movie.
Or some idiot with a hat.
Yeah. One of those guys with a big clown wig and John 3:16 on a placard.
Yeah, stadium seats are the way to go, and God bless IMAX and 3D. Yeah, do you do your movies in 3D or not?
I do not care for 3D movies, and in general, I don't like 3D movies that feel to me like the 3D was crammed in as an afterthought. Where it's just like, oh, here's this 3D effect, and it's like, woo, and all this stuff's coming out at you and things, like the old monster chiller horror theater kind of, Dr. Tongue's 3D House of Stewardesses kind of, thing.
Put
it's an
the
old
mask
SCTV
on
reference
now.
if you guys ever watched SCTV.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, I can watch them. Like Avatar, I really thought was a good movie, and I thought that the 3D really worked in that. Mm-hmm. What I have decided is I don't like IMAX 3D movies.
Really?
I don't mind seeing if it's at a Limax theater, and the difference. A Limax is like the regular theater where they've got like a slightly bigger screen than normal, and they call it IMAX. And an IMAX theater has got like the really steeply differentiated seats and like an 80-foot tall screen, and there aren't that many of those real IMAX theaters around. Completely different.
Yeah.
At a real IMAX theater, I do not like 3D, and the reason is that I can't see that entire screen at the same time, and I'm always getting ghosted images off on the sides, and I have to turn my head a lot because just your peripheral vision's going out the side of those glasses, and you're getting the ghosted image and stuff. Kind of a regular size screen that's got 3D on it, it's not that bad. But on an actual IMAX screen, I don't like 3D.
And Paul, wasn't that your complaint when we saw Superman Returns? We went to see that in IMAX downstate. Remember that?
No, my complaint was that the movie sucked.
Well, besides like that,
I will agree with Paul on that one.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the fact that I really can't remember much about the film, yeah, it was pretty. Well, I think also where we sat too. I mean, yeah, it was a bit much. I think it was a bit much.
You don't remember Kevin Costner throwing himself into a tornado and
that was the best part.
Destroying Metropolis and then snapping Zod's neck like a twig?
No, see, he didn't see
Those
that.
are highlights.
I'm talking about Superman
Superman
Returns.
Science hero flying around on that big flying dog from the Never-Ending Story?
Oh my God! No, we were talking about Superman Returns.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Man of Steel.
No,
Man of Steel. No.
Spoiler alert! You just ruined the movie for me. He hasn't seen it yet.
I don't call spoiler alert on a movie that came out years ago.
It is for me. I'm slow, but
Oh my
Been
God!
on Blu-ray for a year. Jeez.
Hold on.
With a program.
It's actually been on my hard drive for about that long too. Listen,
You're not missing anything.
Okay, well, I've heard that from several people too. Listen, as far as you were saying before, Bob, about like you don't watch trailers, you make it a point of not watching the stuff if you can help it. When we went to go see Cap, the second one, the one we just saw, I hadn't seen anything for it. I hadn't seen one frame of that film. Didn't see one trailer, nothing, and I loved it. I think I loved it even more because of that. I saw a trailer for it, maybe the neck. I think when I came home, I looked up the trailer for it, and I couldn't believe how much they actually revealed in it. And yeah, I'm going to try to make that my policy from now on. So it's just not, it's kind of hard to do in this day and age, but if you could help it, that's what I'm going to do. And recommend.
I regularly see trailers where I think after I saw the trailer, well, geez, they just showed me the whole movie. I barely need to go see it now. It's like, what else is going to be in there?
Oh, and in the case of Winter Soldier, I mean, they revealed, they show the last lines of dialogue in the film, in the trailer. Like,
I actually
neither here nor there.
To plan out my summer. Like the kids and I, that's our thing. We love to watch trailers, and we can schedule our entire summer around, because we knew this was going to be a big one. We've got Cap, and we've got Godzilla, Spider-Man, and God knows what else. So,
X-Men First Class, Days of Future Past.
Yeah, looking forward to that too.
I just see every one of those movies that comes out, so I don't really need to do a whole lot of planning. It's just, if it's any kind of science fiction, fantasy, or comic book movie, I go see it.
Well, it's just trickier on my end because of the whole custody thing. So it's just, which weekends do I? Because I would like to see them when they open, but which weekends do I have the boys? Which weekends don't I? That kind of thing. So it's a little trickier, but it's well worth it.
Well, they'll get a little older, and then you won't have to worry about that anymore.
True. All right,
my kids, they go see these movies mostly with their friends, and Janine will go see them with me.
No,
but
my boys,
I don't. The kids don't necessarily. I mean, I see some with them, but not that many.
No, that's it's been a tradition since they started going to movies. They will only go see superhero movies with me. So that's our thing, and I like that. All right, gentlemen. It's 11:45, and I got to get up soon.
Oh. Ciao.
Thanks for stopping by. Sorry it took so long.
May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you.
Nanu.
Nanu. All right, guys. It's been real. How do I turn this off? There we go. Leave the call. In the book.